Hey everyone, and welcome back to Grammatically Correct. Today, in the second step to grammar mastery, we're going to talk all about how to make compound sentences. So in the last lesson, we talked all about the simple sentence and how there were basically 9 different types of simple sentences. And by mixing up these types of simple sentences, you add a certain variety to your writing. We also mentioned that the simple sentence is sometimes called the independent clause. An independent clause can stand alone as a simple sentence, but you can also use the independent clause as a foundation. So in this presentation, I'm going to refer to it sometimes as the foundational clause. And I call it a foundational clause because when you lay down that foundation, you can then add onto it. And that's how you build compound and complex sentences. So what do we mean by a compound sentence? Well, first of all, there are 3 different types of compound sentences that we're going to look at today. Each compound sentence consists of 2 simple sentences or 2 independent clauses. Now, the first independent clause I call the foundation. That's the foundational clause. The second independent clause I'm just going to refer to as the independent clause. But there will always basically be 2 independent clauses in every compound sentence. This is what I mean. So the first type of compound sentence begins with our foundational independent clause. Immediately after that foundational independent clause, you would put down a semicolon. And then after that, you would add a second independent clause. And you'll notice this independent clause is not capitalized. You can see the little I. It's lowercase. After that, you will put a period down, and then you will have a compound sentence. The second type of compound sentence also has 2 independent clauses. So we start with the foundational independent clause. Then you're going to add a semicolon again. But this time we're going to put what we call a transition or a transitional device. Immediately following the transitional device, there will be a comma, and then there will be, of course, another independent clause and your period. So that's the second type of compound sentence. The third type of compound sentence, again, begins with that foundational independent clause. Then you will add a comma, and then you will add one of 7 conjunctions, which we'll talk about, and then you would add your second independent clause along with your period. So these are the basic structures of compound sentences. Let's look at each one a little bit more closely. So the first compound sentence is the most basic. It's just 2 independent clauses joined by a semicolon, but they must both be independent clauses. So our first independent clause, our foundational independent clause, we're going to begin with the actor Karen. Okay, that's our first actor, our first A. Now let's provide the action. Karen, what did she do? She complained. And how did she complain? She complained loudly. Now that I have a simple sentence or an independent clause, I can put my semicolon down. Next, I'll begin my second independent clause. My second independent clause should not be capitalized unless it is a proper noun or the pronoun I. In this case, we're using she, so we won't capitalize it. Who is she? She is referring back to Karen. It is important to note here that both independent clauses should be closely related to each other. Now, what did Karen do? Well, Karen annoyed, and she annoyed whom? She annoyed the other shoppers. Now I'll put down my period. If you look at these 2 independent clauses carefully, Karen complained loudly, she annoyed the other shoppers, you can see how they both connect to each other, and that's vital for compound sentences. You want to make sure that both independent clauses are related to each other in some way. Let's do another one just to make sure that we got it. In this one, our actor is going to be a thing actor. Several phones. What did the several phones do? They recorded. And they recorded what? The incident. I'll put down my semicolon, and my actor is going to be videos, so we'll lowercase it. Videos were posted. Put your period down, you're done. You get several phones recorded the incident. Videos were posted. And of course, the videos are referring to the phones. Our third example today will be the store. This is a place actor. What did the store do? The store closed. When? It closed early. Put my semicolon down, and then I will say the shoppers of the store, went home, period. The store closed early. The shoppers went home. The second type of compound sentence uses what we call a transition or a transitional device to combine the 2 independent clauses. Both independent clauses still need to be related to each other, but the transition helps to connect them. There are different types of transitions. There's single one-word transitions like therefore, however, moreover, eventually, furthermore. There's basic phrase transitions, as a result, of course, in due time, for instance, on the other hand. And then you have more complicated transitions, which might be more complicated phrases or clauses even. Speaking then from experience, for example, is a participial phrase. A person of some renown is a noun phrase. Happy as a clam would be called an adjective phrase. And then although few would agree and whenever the chance arrives, those would be subordinate clause transitional devices, okay? They're all basic transitions, but as you can see, if you use a one-word transition or maybe a subordinate clause transition, it will create a different flow combining your two independent clauses together. So let's go back and let's create a foundational clause now. We're going to begin with Karen. Karen will be our actor. What did she do? She complained. And how did she complain? Well, she complained loudly. When you use a transition, you're going to have a semicolon after your first independent clause. Then you're going to add the transitional device. I'm going to use the transition therefore. After the transitional device, you're going to put a comma, and then you're going to start your independent clause. Remember, don't capitalize the second independent clause because it's still part of the same sentence. So my actor is going to be she. Now, she is not a proper noun. It's not the pronoun I, so we lowercase it. What did she do? She annoyed. And whom did she annoy? She annoyed the other shoppers. Then you put your period down, and you're done. Now, I'm going to use the exact same independent clause or foundational clause for the next sentence. Karen complained loudly, but this time I'm going to use a different type of transition. So I'll put my semicolon down and I'm going to use as a result. Then I'll put my comma and then my second independent clause, she annoyed the other shoppers, and don't forget the period. Karen complained loudly. As a result, she annoyed the other shoppers. Our next independent clause, we'll use Karen complained loudly again, but this time I'm going to use what we call an adjective phrase, happy as a clam, to connect my two independent clauses. So I'll put my comma down and I'll say she annoyed the other shoppers and I'll put my period. Now this is an interesting type of transitional device because it does connect Karen complained loudly to the idea of her annoying the other shoppers, but it also adds an extra detail. When she is complaining loudly and when she is annoying the other shoppers, this makes her very happy. It delights her, right? So it reads, Karen complained loudly. Happy as a clam, she annoyed the other shoppers. So transitional devices can simply connect one clause to another, but they can also add a certain level of detail as well. Our last compound sentence, we're going to do something slightly different. I'm going to change the tense of complained to complains. So Karen complains loudly. This is something she always does. It doesn't matter what day it is, she just does this, right? And then I'm going to use a subordinate clause as my transitional device. Whenever the chance arrives, you'll notice arrives is also in the present tense. Then I'll put my comma and I'll put my second independent clause, she annoys the other shoppers. And then I'll put my period. All three actions, complains, arrives, and annoys, are in the present tense. And the reason we did this is because whenever the chance arrives, she does these things, always. It's always present. It's always part of who she is. So that's why you don't want to set it off as a single act in the past by making it complained loudly this one time. No, she always does it whenever the chance arrives. So that's why we changed the tense there. Another way to join two independent clauses is by using a conjunction. There are 7 different types of conjunctions. They are for and nor, but, or, yet, so. If you can't remember them, just take the first letter from each of the words and you will spell out fanboys. For and nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay, so let's start with an independent clause as always, our foundational clause. Karen complained. That's our actor and our action. And how did she complain? She complained loudly. Now, when you do use a conjunction, you're always going to need a comma in front of it, okay? So Karen complained loudly. For, we're going to use our first conjunction. I call for the effect cause conjunction because you get the effect in the first independent clause and then you get the cause of that effect in the second independent clause. So the effect is she is complaining loudly, right? So what is the cause of this? Karen complained loudly for she is what? A meanie, period. So because she is a meanie, she complained loudly. So the effect comes first, the cause comes in the second independent clause. Our next independent clause is going to begin with she. What did she do? She demanded. And what did she demand? She demanded an apology. So let's put our comma down, and now we will use the conjunction and. The and is the addition conjunction. It builds onto the idea of the first independent clause. So she demanded an apology, and her face turned bright red, period. Now, you can see how she's demanding this apology, and while she's doing it, she's getting angrier and angrier, right? So that's how we are building on to the idea in the first independent clause, in that foundational clause. Our next actor is going to be the manager. Now, something weird is going to happen here. We're going to use what we call an action phrase. The manager did listen. These are two words. It's a verb phrase. They're working together as the action of the sentence. But something else is happening here. He did listen not. Now, we don't say the manager did listen not. It sounds a little awkward, a little formal. What we say is the manager did not listen. And that will happen sometimes with the word not. It will kind of slip in between the action phrase. So when it does, don't be surprised. We speak this way, it almost happens naturally. But not technically is the answer here. Then we'll put our comma down, and then we're going to use the conjunction nor. Now, nor is the conjunction that messes up the order of the second independent clause. It always puts things in kind of disarray. So the manager did not listen, nor he will be our actor. Nor he did give. But you don't say nor he did give. You say nor did he give. So you could see how the actor kind of moved in between the action phrase. Nor did he give what? Into her demands. Put your period down and you're done. The manager did not listen, nor did he give into her demands. Also notice the word not appeared in the first independent clause and the foundational clause. A lot of times you'll have the word not when you're using the nor conjunction. Next actor will be the crowd. The crowd, our action is was. How were they? They were annoyed. So the crowd was annoyed, right? This time we'll put our comma down. We'll use the conjunction but. Now the but is the contradiction conjunction. So whatever happens in the first independent clause, an unexpected turn will take place in the second independent clause. So the crowd was annoyed, but they did disperse, not, period. Okay? They did not disperse is how we would write it, but technically they is the actor, did disperse is the action phrase, and the answer is not. But again, the word not moves around sometimes and breaks up those action phrases. Our next actor will be they. The action will be knew. And what did they know? Now, they're going to know a large chunk of information here. They knew Karen would either keep screaming, comma, or she would be, action phrase, arrested, period. Now, the or conjunction is kind of the uncertain conjunction. It's like one thing could happen or something else could happen. So in the first foundational clause, you'll notice the word either appeared. They knew Karen would either keep screaming or she would be arrested. But we're not sure because we're using the or conjunction. The next independent clause would be the confrontation became heated. We will use the yet conjunction here. The yet is kind of like the but conjunction. That unexpected thing might happen, right? The confrontation became heated, yet there was what? No sign of the police. You would almost expect them to arrive, but they don't. Okay, so but and yet are very similar in that way. And finally, our last compound sentence will begin with the manager realized. What did he realize? He realized life is short, comma, so he decided to quit and put your period down. I call so the cause and effect conjunction because the manager realized life is short, the effect is he decided to quit. The problem with creating compound sentences is sometimes they sound kind of choppy, especially if you have two very basic independent clauses. So just like in our last presentation, when we talked about the 9 different types of independent clauses, you should try to vary your independent clauses when you create your compound sentences. So here's what I mean. If you start with 2 very basic independent clauses like the store closed early, the shoppers drove to their homes, well, these are very basic actor plus action plus answer clauses, right? You can keep one of them the same, the store closed early, but the other independent clause, what you might want to do is you might want to stretch it out a little bit. So our actor, the shoppers, will keep, drove, the action will keep. Where did they drive or how did they drive? They drove through heavy traffic, okay? Now I'm extending it a little bit, but I'm not done. Why did they drive through heavy traffic? To reach. And to reach what? To reach the comfort of their homes. And then you put your period down. So what started out as a very basic compound sentence, the store closed early, the shoppers drove to their homes, we've now added a bit of variety to it. The store closed early, the shoppers drove through heavy traffic to reach the comfort of their homes. And it flows a little bit better and doesn't sound as choppy. Let's try it again. This time we'll have Karen complained loudly, therefore she annoyed the other shoppers. Two very basic independent clauses. Well, we'll keep Karen complained loudly and we'll keep therefore. But this time we're going to stretch out our second independent clause. She annoyed whom? The other shoppers. But she's not done. She did something else as well. So I'm going to say and she made whom? Every man and woman among them do what? Wish they could be somewhere else. And then we put our period down. Karen complained loudly, therefore she annoyed the other shoppers and made every man and woman among them wish they could be somewhere else. It flows a little bit better. Finally, we'll use Karen complained loudly, for she was a meanie. Well, this time I'm going to say Karen complained loudly, but I'm not done. She did something else. She assaulted. Who did she assault? Well, she assaulted several innocent bystanders, but she's still not done, so add a comma. And what else did she do? She threatened to do what? To call the police. Now I will put my comma and my conjunction, and then I will keep my original independent clause, she was a meanie. Karen complained loudly, assaulted several innocent bystanders, and threatened to call the police, for she was a meanie. This has a different rhythm than our original basic compound sentence. One other thing I want to say about compound sentences is that for the most part, you're going to want to keep your actions parallel. You're going to want to keep them the same tense. So if your action is in the past tense in the first independent clause and the foundational clause, it will probably be in the past tense in the second independent clause. An example of an exception to that is in our first sentence, Karen complained loudly, past tense, for she is a meanie. She is always a meanie. So that's why we keep it in the present tense in the second independent clause. She complained earlier. If you look at the other sentences, she demanded an apology and her face turned bright red. You can see how those actions are both in the past tense. And that's going to happen most of the time. In the next sentence, the manager did not listen, nor did he give into her demands. You can see how we have a verb phrase or an action phrase, did listen and did give. So for the most part, when you do create these compound sentences, your actions, your verbs are going to be in the same tense. They're going to be parallel to each other. Of course, there will always be exceptions. Just for the most part, keep them the same and you should be okay. So there you have it. That's how you create 3 different types of compound sentences. Just always make sure that when you are creating compound sentences, both of the independent clauses are related to each other in some way. And also remember that you can vary the length of those independent clauses to build on the variety of those compound sentences. In the next lesson, the third step to grammar mastery, building complex sentences with subordinate clauses, we're going to explore how you can create even more intricate sentence patterns. I hope you all enjoyed the lesson today. Please be sure to like and subscribe to Grammatically Correct. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.